Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. The new college football AP Top 25 poll is out after a wild Week 10. 7 ranked teams lost yesterday, and as a result, we have plenty of movement in the latest AP poll. You're looking at the top 10 teams right now. Oregon remains number 1. After a rivalry game in Happy Valley where the Buckeyes came out on top, they move up 1 spot to 3, while Penn State falls a bit in the top 10 to 6. Take a look at who's number 8, though. Indiana, hello, finally breaking into the top 10 after a dominant performance over Michigan State. The Hoosiers now 9-0 on the season. A look now at 11 through 20. A ton of teams fall this week after suffering losses to unranked teams. UC, Texas A&M, Iowa State, and Louisville all fall significantly. SMU moved up in the most here in the middle of the pack after defeating what was an undefeated Pitt team. I know our own Douzable is fired up about the Stangs finally getting some respect. And a look at the rest of the teams now that round out the new AP Top 25 poll. Vanderbilt back in the rankings, along with Louisville squeaking their way in after a big win over Clemson. We are officially entering a critical November for many teams. We're going to dive into all of this and so much more as we welcome you to CBS Sports HQ. I am Jordan Giorgio. Joining me from afar is Douzable and Brad Crawford. Gentlemen, it is great to see you. Brad, I want to start with you. Let's begin with one of the teams that did fall significantly in the rankings. It's Texas A&M. They have one of the biggest drop-offs after being upset by South Carolina. A&M's loss means there's now 5 teams with 1 loss in the SEC. How do you feel about their chances at the CFP now, especially if you kind of look at the Aggies' remaining schedule, taking into consideration that final matchup against Texas?
Yeah, I was in Columbia last night, and the lid came off that game early for South Carolina. Yeah, Gamecocks went up 2 touchdowns early, outscored A&M 24 points in the second half, blew out the SEC's lone remaining unbeaten in conference play. But the good news for Mike Elko's team is right now A&M still controls its own destiny in the SEC, one of 2 of those 5 teams to do that. If A&M beats Auburn here in a couple weeks and then is able to take care of business at home against the Longhorns, the Aggies will still make it to Atlanta. But this team has some issues. Defensively, they gave up almost 300 yards rushing last night to the Gamecocks, a team that has been sort of iffy running the football this season. And SEC road games are a different animal, I realize that. But still, 2 tough games left. They could always be upset on the Plains at Auburn. And Texas, I think, right now is better than A&M. So A&M's a team, Jordan, that I have taken out of my projected playoff after Week 10.
All right, we're going to see the full look at your 12 teams a little bit later on in the show. Last week, we were discussing the quarterback situation for A&M with Connor Wegman and Marcel Reed. And we were talking about the advantages of having 2 quarterbacks. After watching last night's game, did the old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none, prove to be true in your opinion?
I don't believe so. I think South Carolina needs a lot more respect. When you look at it, they could potentially only have 1 loss this season, right? 2 of those games came down to the wire. The Alabama game came down to the wire. They won last night versus Texas A&M, and people have always talked about Texas A&M's defense and their defensive line. South Carolina's defensive line is one of the best in the nation, and you saw them get after Marcel Reed. Now, they didn't have a ton of sacks because Marcel Reed is almost impossible to tackle when he's back there at quarterback, but they flustered the young quarterback all night long, and then they finally made him make a mistake with that late interception. And to me, Brad, that's what turned the game, that interception. And then after that, they just couldn't stop a nosebleed in the run game. I mean, Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers had a field day on the ground. You talked about it, giving up nearly 300 yards rushing when they were one of the better teams in all the nation against the run. So to me, this doesn't say that Marcel Reed isn't the guy. I just think they went into the perfect storm out there in South Carolina when you talk about playing that defense and how good it really is. I think it was just tough for the young quarterback last night.
Yeah, that was a good point. Got to give credit where credit is due. A&M weren't the only ones, as it was a day of upsets yesterday. Louisville picks up their first win in program history over Clemson. SMU got a big win over once undefeated Pitt. This was a great week for your ACC predictions. Tell us more.
Well, I'm going to let our producer, Mark, go ahead and roll that beautiful bean footage, because I predicted that SMU was a dark horse in the ACC. So go ahead, Mark. Go ahead and roll that beautiful beam footage for everybody out there.
Really, SMU is the only intriguing team out of this. Yeah. What sort of noise, or maybe not this year, but the next couple of seasons we could see from them?
No, Amanda, this year. I think they're a dark horse for the ACC. Okay. And I know a lot of people will look back and look at their schedule versus Power 5 teams last year. They lost to your Oklahoma Sooners, lost to TCU. But when you look at those games, they were both on the road. When you look at SMU's schedule this year, they have Florida State at home. And then the rest of those games are winnable.
Leger really said, show the receipts, bring them.
Yeah, so when you look at this Mustang team, I think everybody is always accustomed to talking about their offense with Rhett Lashley, right? But what people aren't talking about, Brad, is this defense. They have multiple defensive linemen that can really get after you. I love what Ty McGill has really brought to that secondary since coming over a few years ago from Stanford. And they proved last night that they could take on the top teams in the ACC. Going back to that BYU game, people didn't have a lot of faith in SMU. Well, Brad, that looks like a pretty good loss right now, right? When you look at what the Cougars have done this year being undefeated. They've literally taken on most of the top teams in the ACC besides Miami. I'm not going to throw Clemson in there because I think they've been catfishing everybody all year long. But when you look at their schedule, look, they took on Pitt, beat them. Dude, we saw Miami struggle with them for a little bit as well, right? But they won that game. That TCU win actually seemed like a pretty good win. And now Louisville is ranked as well, and they won that game on the road. So really love what I've seen from Brashard Smith, their running back. I know a lot of people have said when R.J. Maryland went down, they're tied in. What is this SMU team going to do? All they do is the next guy just steps up. Matthew Hibner, over 100 yards and a touchdown in that last game versus Pitt. So really love what I've seen from the SMU Mustangs. I said they were a dark horse to get to the ACC championship game. And if they take care of business, looks like they're on a dead course to play the Miami Hurricanes for that ACC title.
Oh, it would be a fun one. Let's go ahead and get to the Big Ten now, you guys. You know, Brad, after yesterday's rivalry game against Penn State and Ohio State, do you think the voters got the rankings for both those teams right this week?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think Ohio State's a better team than Georgia right now. I mean, we've seen 2-3 interception games from Carson Beck. Bulldogs have a quarterback issue, whether or not Kirby Smart wants to admit it. And Ohio State went on the road, beat an unbeaten top 5 Penn State team, and did so despite an early mistake from Will Howard. So his ability to bounce back was very impressive. Ohio State, I know it lacks quality wins outside of yesterday's victory in Happy Valley, but the lone loss was by a point on the road to Oregon, and the Buckeyes simply ran out of time against college football's best team. So I still think Ohio State is one of the national championship front runners. They could easily give Oregon a run here in a few weeks if they get past Indiana and get a rematch with the Ducks in Indy. So Ohio State's a team right now, Jordan, that I would probably have a spot or two higher than they are.
Okay, so with that being said, Leger, I saw you shaking your head in agreement, it looked like, with Brad's point there. Oh, yeah. So with that being said, where should they land in the upcoming college football playoff rankings on Tuesday?
Ohio State should be the second best team in the nation behind Oregon. To Brad's point, like, they ran out of time in that Oregon game. If they were able to get another bite at the apple, they potentially win that game on the road in Eugene. And you talked about it, right? Being down by 10-0 versus Penn State, the resiliency of this team to come back and score 14 points unanswered to take the lead and never really relinquish it for the rest of the game. When you look at this Georgia team, right, it's literally like Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You don't know what Georgia team you're going to get, right? They almost lose to Kentucky on the road. And then yesterday, Carson Beck, another 3-interception game. He has 8 interceptions in the last 3 games. He has 11 interceptions this year. So if not for that Georgia defense, they potentially lose a couple other games. Because even in that Texas upset win, Carson Beck did not play well. So when you look at this Georgia team, like, I don't have a lot of faith in it. And to be honest with you, Jordan and Brad, I got them losing this week coming up versus Ole Miss, who I believe still has an outside shot to get into the college football playoffs.
All right. Sounds good. Let's leave it there because we have a lot to talk about. Let's get to the Big 12. Brad, major shakeup as both Kansas State and Iowa State lost to unranked opponents. While that was happening, Brad, if you're Dion and company, were you just grinning at home on their bye week watching that play out?
I was going to say, nobody's happier than Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter right now. Colorado moved up 2 spots in the AP Top 25, but more importantly, now Colorado can win out and potentially face BYU in the Big 12 championship game. There's still some convoluted tiebreakers in case they end in a tie with Iowa State, but Colorado has a grand opportunity right now to win out against Texas Tech, Utah. You see the schedule there, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. That, a couple of those teams are the bottom of the barrel. But in Lubbock next week, 3.5-point dog right now for the early line. That's going to be a difference-making game for Colorado. Got to win that one to keep all of these season-long goals ahead of the Buffs.
All right. Well, my next question was going to be, do you see Dion and company in the upcoming college football playoff? Don't answer it. Leave it there. Let it marinate, because we got to hit a quick break, but we'll discuss it when we come back. One last look at the top 10 teams in the latest AP Top 25 poll. 7 ranked teams lost yesterday, and as a result, you see so much movement. Oregon, your unanimous #1 this week. After a rivalry game in Happy Valley, Buckeyes, they do move up 1 spot. Leger and Brad think they should maybe be in that second spot ahead of Georgia. Penn State falls 3 spots to #6. And hello, Indiana. 9-0 on the season and breaking into the top 10. Quick break for us, but much more to come when we return here on CBS Sports HQ.